Hi and welcome to this DCP web tutorial. In today's tutorial we'll be using Blender to create some exploding text using the Explode Modifier. So let's watch this little video sequence that I created. So we've got this text that floats down, then it disintegrates, and then it gets to a certain point and then all these particles fly away. So I'm using the Explode Modifier to do this. There's kind of a few things going on here. I've got this text here and I've got these particles. So those are two elements. And then we've got this volumetric lighting with a HDRI map, and then you can see here the text starts to disintegrate, and I'm using the Explode modifier to do that. Then these particles kind of dance on the floor a little bit, and then they just get pushed up using a wind object. So you can use this logic for quite a lot of different things. You can use it to create fireworks, all sorts of stuff. I tried to look on YouTube for some good tutorials about the Explode modifier, and a lot of them are for older versions of Blender, and they just didn't really make much sense to me. So I thought, let's make one myself and let's share that with you. So let's aim to make something like this. Let's aim to do something a little bit better maybe. Let's close this and let's open up Blender. And the first thing we'll do is click on General, File, Save As like usual. I've got a folder on my desktop. I'm going to call this Exploding Text. Let's do that lowercase. So just give your file a sensible name, put a -01 because we're going to save different versions 02, 03 as we go along this project. So let's save this. Let's click on the cube and delete it. Then hold down the middle mouse button and pan around. So you've got the X and Y in this direction. Let's press Ctrl S to save. Let's press Shift A to insert a text object. And then we'll hit the Tab key, or you can go to edit mode here. Try and remember the Tab key, that's easier. And I'm going to type in exploding like this, and then hit the Tab key or go to edit mode, object mode. So we just got this text called exploding. You can put any text in here you like. You don't have to type exploding. You can put your name, your company name, whatever you like. Try and keep the text roughly around these many characters and try and keep it one word if possible, but you don't have to, right? It's entirely your choice. So we'll go to my web browser and we're going to go to free commercial fonts. So we'll go to this website called Free Commercial Fonts, and we want to download a font. So we want to look for something that's got quite a thick edge to it. So let's just create a folder here. Actually, we won't do that. Let's look for a font. Now, one thing about this website which I didn't know before is in here, in this little text box here, you can type in something like exploding, like exactly what I've typed into Blender. So when you type that in, then all the fonts will show with that word. So this is quite useful actually. I never knew this was there. I just found it the other day. So you can type in whatever you like, and then all of the characters, the fonts will show with that word in there, which is quite useful because then you can see the fonts quite clearly. And I want a really thick edge font, right? Something that's very, very basic shape and thick edge. So you don't want anything crazy, anything too thin. You want something like this. Something like this will be perfect, right? This font here. So I'm going to use this one. Click download. I'll put a link to this font, so let me click on it and we'll make some notes here. Let's just do fonts. So this will be the font that we'll use, and I'll keep track of all the files that we download. So let's drag this into here, and you can see the font here, what it looks like. Let's right click and let's extract that font to this directory. We'll minimize the browser, and then we'll delete this zip file, we don't need it. And we'll rename this to font. Let's just see what's inside. So we've got another folder, and then we've got the font here. So we'll leave it like this. It doesn't really matter too much. So let's close this and let's go back to Blender, and we will press we'll click on this text. It's already selected anyway, or press A to select. Actually, don't do that. Just go up to here and click on the text here, and then press X to, well, no, let's not do that. Let's press R to rotate, then X, then 90, we just want to rotate it around. And then we'll go to the object data here, go to font, and then open the folder here. Then go to the font folder you've created and go and select that font, and then click open. Now we've got that text here. Let's just zoom in a little bit here, and we want to give it a bit more spacing, so let's space it out a little bit, just by 1. Then we want to give it some geometry, so we want to do the extrusion. Let's set it to about 0.2, I think will be good. 0.2. And we don't want any bevels or anything like that. We want the font to have just a nice straight flat edge like this. So that's all we need to do with the font here. That's it, pretty much done. Let's go to Object, Set Origin, Geometry to Origin. That puts this little yellow dot in the center of the text, and that will be its rotation point. That's quite an important step. Let's really, what you want to do is get your viewport to this sort of angle, yeah? In fact, we should really click on this text and drag it up a bit. Drag it off of the floor. Can you see there's a gap here? It's off the floor. Then rotate around and try and get your viewport to somewhere like here. Then press Ctrl-Alt-0, and that will bring the camera into that view. We can click on the camera and press G on our keyboard, the letter G. That grabs the camera. Then you can just move your mouse wheel up to try and center it out. Something like this. Let's get that centered a bit better. Let's zoom in a little bit. We will click on the camera. Let's click on the camera object data here. We'll set the X location to 0. We'll set the we'll leave the Y and the Z. We'll set the rotation on the Y to 0, and we'll set the rotation on the Z to 0. So that's nice and leveled out and straight, bang in the middle. And we want to move back a little bit and move it up a little bit, something like this. In fact, we want to rotate it to about 90 degrees. So rotate the X to 90 degrees and then just drag it up like this, something like this here. That should be okay for now. Let's middle mouse click, and if we move into this text and select it and then go to the edit mode, actually let's not do that. Let's go to object mode. Let's go to object, and then we want to go to convert and convert it to a mesh first. Yeah, so we convert it to a mesh. Now we can't really edit the text. Well, we can edit the text, but we can't change the characters, right? As soon as you go to object mode and go to convert to a mesh, now it's actually a mesh object. If we select it and go to edit mode, we can see the vertices here and how these shapes are being created. So this isn't really good for the way that the mesh is being created, or these vertices. This isn't really good for the explode modifier. So we want to change this. Let's go to object mode again. Let's go to the modifier, and in the modifier we want to select remesh here. So when we select remesh, something strange happens here. Untick this option, remove disconnected pieces, and then in the octree depth, just keep moving this up until you see the text correctly, right? So around 8, for me around 8 is really good. If you've got text with a bit more funny sort of shape inside, then you may need to go a little bit higher, but 8 should be about good. And you can see the text looks perfect now again, right? So what did that do? First of all, we need to apply it, so let's click apply. And once we've clicked apply, we can go back to edit mode, and now you can see how the mesh has been made. It's nice and clean. It's really looking good, right? It's all uniformed, and that's what that particular option does. It remeshes it and it gives it nice clean vertices, and this is perfect for the explode modifier, right? It's exactly what we want. So there's a lot of vertices in here, but that's okay. Let's just go back to the object mode, and really what we want to do first, let's have a little think about this. There's quite a few things that we need to do. So let's first of all, let's go and grab a HDRI map. I think will be a smart move. So let's press Ctrl S to save. Let's go to File, Save As, and save this as version 2. And version 2, let's save this. Let's minimize this, and let's go back to our web browser. And let's go to HDRI. Let's do HDRI Haven. Let's open up our folder again, and we want to create a new folder called HDRI. And we're going to go down here. We're going to download a few different HDRI maps. So let's go to nighttime, and we'll download the usual one I use. This one, Shanghai. So we'll click on this one. This is what it looks like. Let's click 4K to download that one. And then let's go back a few steps, and I want to try something different. Let's see, they've got some new ones here, right? So let's click on this cinema lobby, this one, and let's download that one. So, and we'll download one more, let's say. Let's have a little look. Let's look at something with high contrast. Let's try this one. Satara Night, right? This one. So let me copy this. We'll click download on this one. Just make a note of these HDRI maps, the ones that I'm downloading. Let's drag them into this folder. So we drag all three, and then we can see how these affect our scene. So we need actually one more thing. Let's go to, let's have a think here. We want to go to PBR, free PBR. And then we'll make a new folder and call it material. It's worth making these folders because it just keeps things clean and you know where everything is afterwards, right? Let's click on metal here. And in my example, I used the gold material, but I think we do something different today. So if you want to follow the example that I did before, like in this video, then I use this gold material here, scuff gold. So maybe we'll try, let's try the copper one today. So let's do copper. And I'm going to try this scuffed Unreal Engine one. Let's see, I think it's this. I think it might be the Unity one we need. So let's click on Unity. I'll check for you quickly. So we'll download that. If it's the wrong one, then we need the other one. I'll make a note as well. Let's drag this in here, right click, and we'll extract it. Let's see if this is the right. This is the wrong one. So let's delete this. I know it's the wrong one because it's got a PSD file in here. And I could convert that PSD file, but that's kind of a bit long. It's not long, it's easy enough. But what did we just download? The Unity one. So let's download the Unreal Engine. This is the one we want. So let's put a copy of this into the notes. Where's our notes? Here we are. And this will be font material. Okay, so let's go to this material folder. We've got this second one, which is the Unreal Engine. Did I download the same one again? Unity. Let's try and extract that. Extract. So this is the one we want. Unreal Engine. Okay, so we've got everything we need. Let's close down the browser and then we will go to Blender again. And the first thing we'll do is let's add that material to this text. So let's go to our render view for now. Go into render view. Let's go to the shading. Let's go file save. In fact, before we go to shading, let's go to UV editor. And in the UV editor, let's press B on our keyboard to box select. So let's just do that one more time. So you press the letter B and then drag your mouse over the text, and that will select all of the vertices on this text. Then press U and then do UV, Smart UV project, and then click OK. And then you can see it's projected this text, unwrapped it basically, right? Then we can go to the shading, and this is our text here. And we want to give that text a new material, so click new here. and then name that material text material. I'm getting used to naming my materials now. I don't normally do that, but I think it's a good idea. So start naming your materials. Let's drag this to the side. Let's go to the desktop, and inside this folder we've got the material here, the scuffed copper. So this is it, and we'll pick this darker version. There's two versions here. There's a lighter and a darker version of this copper material. We'll drag the darker version down. It says that it's base color, right? Base color here, so connect the color to the base color here. Then tick this little option in the corner to minimize it. This minimize, maximize, and then drag this one down. This is the metallic. So all you do is connect the color to the metallic here, and then go to non-color data and minimize that one. Then we'll go to the roughness. Let's drag that and connect it to the roughness, minimize that one. In fact, set it to non-color data, then minimize it. And sometimes in the viewport you need to just move this a little bit, right? So in this viewport, what you can see is the wireframe, the solid view, and this is called look dev. And basically, if you don't have a HDRI map, because at the moment we don't have one, so if we use look dev mode, then we can see what that text is going to look like with a HDRI image, with all the reflections and stuff, right? At different angles, so we can see that. So that's what that is, this option here. Then we'll drag this, what was this one? We've done that one, I think. We'll drag this one. This is the normal. So this will give the object some bumps and stuff, right? So if we zoom right in, let's apply it first. Shift A, and then vector bump here. So let's do that one more time. So press Shift A, vector, and then bump. Connect the color to the height. Set it to non-color data, and then connect the normal to the normal here. And it might be a little bit tricky to see this. Let's have a look. Here on the edge, for example, if I get real close, right here, you can see all these little dents and stuff. So if you reduce the strength, they'll disappear like this, and you can invert them as well. So you can have them pushing out rather than in, but we want them pushing in. And then it's those little things that make a difference, right? Sometimes. So this is looking good. It's looking okay, right? Nice and shiny, good. Let's go to file, save. Let's go to the layout. So we've got our exploding text in here, and at the moment we're looking at the render view. So we're to render this, press F12. You can see it just looks rubbish, right? Because it's got no HDRI map. So let's create the map first. This is really easy. Let's go to shading. Let's go to the world view here. When you click on world view, as default, inside the world view here, use node should be blue here. Right? It should always be blue. So let's click on this green background here and delete it. And then we'll press Shift A, and we will go to the texture, environmental texture. Let's just move this up to the side. Then we'll press Shift A again, and we'll insert an input which will be a texture coordinate, and then Shift A, and we want to convert, no, we don't want to convert, we want a vector mapping. So every time you want to add objects into this editor, just press Shift A, just like you do on the viewport, right? When you're creating objects. Generated to vector, vector to vector here, and then the color to the surface here. So you won't really see anything at the moment because we're looking in look dev mode. So now we want to go to the render view. So now we're in render view. Let's click open here, and let's go to the HDRI maps. And remember, we downloaded 3. So the cinema lobby was the latest one, the newest one. So let's click open on that. And then you can see what the text looks like in this particular view. And the advantage of putting this mapping here is you can rotate the actual HDRI map. So you can pick a point where the lighting is really nice, right? But for me, let's do one thing. Let's go to the render view, and let's turn on bloom. So turn bloom on here for now. And for me, let's see. Let's try one of the other ones. So let's click the folder here, and we've got the Satara Night. Let's click open on that one. And now you can see the big difference between those two maps, right? Now you've got all this gold and it's looking nice and shining and all this good stuff. So we'll pick a point where we like the lighting for now, and we might adjust it later. So let's see, it's too overkill there. So I think somewhere around here will be good, and then we can change this, we can do loads of stuff to it later. Let's go to layout. So now when we render F12, we'll see our text here, but we'll also see this background, and we don't want that background there. So let's press Shift A and insert a UV sphere. There's probably a few different ways to do this, but this is the way I do it. So this UV sphere, let's drag it up a little bit, and then press 0 on your keyboard. That's the camera view. So this sphere is in front of the camera and the text is in front of the camera. On this sphere, let's select it. So it's already selected, it's highlighted orange. Press S to scale and keep scaling it until you see the text inside, right? Like this. So now we can see the text inside. And let's just pan around here a little bit. And I think we've got enough space. We might need to make it a bit bigger, but I think that's pretty good. In terms of size, if we click on the sphere and go to the object data, you can see it's set to around 41. So let's make it 42, 42, 42, and 42. So let's click on the sphere. Let's go to the material, create a new material, name that background. Let's call it background material. Let's click on the base color and set that to black all the way down, and then the specular, turn that all the way off, and then the roughness, turn that all the way to the top. So now we just got a black background, which is what we want. You can see a lot of bloom is coming off of this text. It's going to shine, it's going to do all this good stuff, right? So we'll adjust this a little bit later because it's a bit overkill in here. Let's do that now, shading, and then let's just rotate it. Let's rotate it to around here. We'll adjust this afterwards anyway. Let's go to the bloom settings and let's just turn down the radius a little bit, right? For now. We'll turn it right down, and we can increase or decrease that as and when we do the animation sequence. In fact, for now, let's turn it right down to something like this. We might even turn it off. Okay, we'll turn it down for now. Let's just turn it off for now. We're going to turn it back on later because I want to see the text quite clearly. And what we'll do, so let's think about this. We want to, let's file, save. We want to now explode this, right? So let's go to the particle system and let's click new. So 1 minute. Let's click on the text, then go to the particle system, then click new, and set this to around 1500 particles, 1500, and press Ctrl S to save. Then go to the modifier, and you'll see the particle system for the text in here. Leave this alone, click on the drop down arrow here, and select the explode here. And then in theory, we should start to see the text disintegrate, right? Like this. You can see. Okay. Let's save this. Every time you do something, you should really get used to pressing Ctrl S and save. Blender's crashed a few times on me, and it's worth saving your work as you go along. So let's go back to the particle system. Let's set the number of particles to around 5,000 for now. And that will give us more segments, right? A lot more segments flowing off. That's what we want. And then let's set the end frame to around 560 for now. Let's go to the Actually, let's deal with this first. Let's set the start frame. Let's set that to around, let's see, about 120. And we want to set the end frame to around 150. So the duration between this explosion, or this explosion here, is going to be very short. We want it to be fast. Right? Then let's set the lifetime to around 450. So we want them to last quite a long time because they're going to do a lot of things. This explosion, right? The particles are going to do a lot of things. Then we will, let's see. Let's go to the velocity. We'll leave this at 1. We'll pretty much leave all these settings as they are. Then in the physics, we want to set the Brownian to around 5. And then let's have a look here in the render. We want to set this to none. The render size, render as none, right? Because we don't want to see, well, we don't need to see, let's see. Yeah, we don't really need to see the halo. The halo never gets rendered anyway, so we might as well not just not show it. We don't need that because all these segments are going to be the particles, right? So what we want to do now is create a floor. So let's press Shift A and insert a plane, and that floor plane will be, let's set the size up, let's have a look. So we want this to be around, we're better off doing this in solid view, right? So we can see everything what's going on. Solid view is a good view for this. So let's set it to around 40 wide. So we want it to be quite wide, and we will set this to around 70. Let's set it to around 80, and you can see the lines cutting through here. We need to go to the camera. Let's click on the camera, go to the camera settings, and with that camera, let's see, we want to set the end clipping to 300 for now. It's going to be able to see pretty far into the distance, right? That's what we want. Let me just pan around here. It looks like we've got enough space, right? Yeah, we've got plenty of space to have this text floating down and hit the floor and do all that good stuff, right? So that's fine. Let's press 0 on our keyboard. In fact, let's press number 3. Number 3 takes us into the side view, but because we've got this sphere here, we can't really see anything. So let's click on the sphere and hide it for the moment. Now we can zoom in and see the text. And we want to click on the floor. This is really important, right? Click on the plane. Let's name it floor. And drag it up just so that it's above the green line here. You should see this green line. Make sure it's above the green line. Then click on the text. And we want to drag this down so that it sits just above the floor. Like this. So let's click on the floor. The floor is here. This is the baseline, you could say, or the we want the floor to be above and then the text to be just above the floor, like this, something like this. We'll middle mouse click and rotate around, and let's press 0 on our keyboard so we see the camera view. This is the camera view. We want to now click on the floor, go to the particle system, now go to the physics system and select collision here for the floor. That way now the particles should hit the floor like this. Let's see, let's turn back on our sphere, and yeah, that should be good. Let's go to the, we need to give this floor a material, right? So let's click on the floor. Let's go to the material. Let's click a new material. Let's name this floor, and we'll set the color to black. We want it to be black. and then we'll set the let's have a look. We're going to bring the specular down, right? And then bring the roughness down as well. Just something like this I think would be good. Maybe a little bit more. Something like this should be good. Let's try that other HDRI map because it seemed to have better colouring in it. So let's go to render, not render, let's go to shading, and in the map let's open this here. So we should be in the world view. Let's go to open and we'll select the Shanghai one and click open. And for me it's just got better colours in it. It just looks better, right? It's got nicer colours in there. And I want to rotate it around to around, let's see, to around 440, 440, minus 440. Let's do minus 440. You get these purple colors, but you can play around with this. I'll leave you to experiment and rotate it, or we'll look at that a bit later. Then we've got better colors on this floor. I prefer these colors rather than the other ones from the other HDRI map. So let's go back to the render and turn on bloom, and we need to increase the radius, right? Let's increase the radius a bit, and let's just let's just move our mouse across here and see what's going on. So these particles will do their thing, and we've got to control them in some way, right? So we'll control them with probably wind, and we'll add some turbulence and a few other things as well. So let's save this, and let's see, something ain't quite right with this floor, right? So let's click on it. Okay, so let's go to the render settings here, and let's turn on screen space reflection. Here, screen space reflection, and let's turn the trace all the way up. Set the tracing all the way up to the top, and the max roughness, let's bring that down to around here. And the edge fading, let's get rid of that. And then we should see all our particles reflect off the floor like this. To render this, let's press F12. Now we can see those particles reflecting off of the floor as they bounce around and do their thing. So that's okay. We'll play around with this a little bit more and try and tidy it up a little bit and get it just the way we like it. I think we need to increase this slightly. Yeah, around here should be good. This edge thickness, let's have a look here. Yeah, that should be fine. Okay, set this to 100 for now. I'm still experimenting with Blender. I'm still learning quite a lot of things off of it. So a lot of my stuff is trial and error and figuring out and reading the manual. But this is very much still in beta, right? So it's hard to work everything out. The render settings, let's press 120 in the viewport. Let's set this to around 100 for now. And then what we would do, this looks pretty good here. Maybe this radius can be a bit more. I think this is pretty good. Okay, so in my example, this text kind of spins and floats down from the top out of the camera view, it floats down, hits the floor, slides in, and then these particles start flying off it and stuff, right? So let's try and get that part done. Let's go to the first frame and let's press Shift A, and we want to insert a cylinder. So here's a cylinder. We want to rotate this, so let's press R to rotate on the X axis. So press R then X, and let's type in it's not going to be on the X axis, is it? Let's see, let's undo that. I want to rotate it this way, so that will be on the Y axis. Let's press R to rotate, and then Y, then 90. So R, then Y, then type in 90. That will rotate 90 degrees this way. Let's just move to the top view. In fact, let's press number 7. Turn off the, where is the background? So this sphere, let's call this background. Let's turn that off for a second so we can see it from the top view. The light here, let's right click on this light here. Light, right click and delete it. Then the cylinder, let's drag that into this collection here. Let's drag the cylinder into this collection here. You don't need to do that, but it's nice to keep everything together. And then we want to scale this on the X-axis, so let's press S to scale on the X-axis and scale it out so that it's the same width basically as the text. It can be slightly smaller, slightly bigger, it doesn't matter, but we want it to be roughly the same width as the text. And then we want to scale it on the, let's go to its object data, and we want to scale this right down to that 0.15. Let's see, that should work. Let's drag it in front of the text. Let's drag it up a little bit so it sits above the floor, and that's still probably too big, so let's bring it down to, I reckon, about 0.5. So it's quite a small cylinder now, right? If we press number 3, when we press number 3 on our keyboard, we see it from right orthographic, then we can position it exactly where we want. So we want it to be around here. And then let's zoom in onto this cylinder here, and we'll go to object mode and go to edit mode. And then in edit mode, we need to turn on the show whole scene transparent. And then we need to press the letter A twice. So when we press it twice fast, it will unselect all of the vertices. If we press it once, it will select everything. Press it twice fast, and it will unselect everything. And let's see. We want to get rid of some of these vertices. I'm just working out how much we want to get rid of. So probably what we'll do is get rid of all it. So we're going to box select all of these bottom ones, not the middle ones here, right? All of these bottom ones here. And when you turn this option on, whole scene transparent, when you box select, you end up selecting all of the vertices. This is just, I want to try and explain why we're using that option, right? So you select everything from this side all the way across to this side as well when you've got these show transparent. So let's press number 3 again. That takes us back into the same view. We've selected these, hit the delete key on your keyboard and say delete vertices here. So that gets rid of half of them. And then really we don't want these ones here. So we're going to select these ones as well. All of these right here. And then do the same, delete. So we're left with this sort of shape, like almost a quarter, right? Quarter section. So let's go back into object mode, and in that right view we can't really see it, so let's see. Let's press number 3. Maybe we need to give it a bit of, we need to solidify it a little bit. So let's go to the modifier. In fact, I didn't do that in my last example, so let's not do that. Let's move it to the front and drag it down to about here. We just want to get it close to the face of this object. Let's drag it here. Let's just zoom out and see how that looks. So you want it sitting in front of the object, right? Like this. Here. So let me explain why we're actually creating this. It might help. This here is going to, what it's going to do is be used for the particle emitter. So let's click on this object. Let's go to background. Let's turn that on first. So let's click on that object. We've select. It's already selected. This cylinder. Let's call it particle emitter. It's already selected. So let's select that first. Then select the text. So hold down the shift key and select the text afterwards. So the particle emitter first, then the text afterwards. Move into the viewport, press Ctrl P and click object here. So that will parent them together. So when we click on this explode text and move it, the cylinder will move with it. Right? That's what we want. So now let's press what did we do? We did spheres, right? So let's press Shift A and we'll insert a icosphere. So this icosphere is here. Let's move it up and move it to the side a little bit. And let's press S to scale it down. It needs to be a bit smaller for now. Let's zoom in on that. And maybe in this example we'll create a few different colors. In the last one it was just a single color particle, just like a yellow color. So maybe in this one we'll use a few different colors. Let's make it a bit different. So to do that, let's click on this icosphere, press Shift D to duplicate it and drag it across, then press Shift D again to duplicate it and drag it across. So you've got 3 icospheres now. Let's click on the first one, go to the material, click new material, and then in here select emission, set it to around 10 for now, and then the color, pick whatever color you want. I'm going to try and pick colors that are roughly like within the scene. So I want like an orangey sort of color. Click the middle one, new material. Let's go to the emission shader. So select emission here, set this to 10, and I'm going to go for like a blue color because we've got some like almost like a purple, right? Purple. Yeah, purple. And then the last one I'm going to leave white, but I'm going to go to new and let's select emission and set it to 10. So it's going to be white. Then let's click on this, right click on this collection here, create a new collection and name this particles. Then click on this one here, hold down the shift key and select the other ones and drag them into the particles collection here. Then click on this cylinder that we created, this quarter cylinder, go to the emitter here, and then if you don't see the emitter, just move your mouse and it will show. Click new, and we'll leave it at 1000 particles for now, and we'll scroll down. Let's just have a quick look here. So let's actually increase this to around 3000. We're going to start it from the first frame. We'll set the lifetime to 150. Then we will let's go down to the render settings here. Let's select collection here, collection. In this collection, in this box here, we need to select particles, pick random, and then we can select random size. And let's just move our mouse across here and we can see these particles being emitted now, right? Here. They need to be a bit bigger, so let's set them to, let's see, probably about, let's press 0 on our keyboard. I think around this size should be fine, maybe a little bit bigger. 0.15 and then set randomness, because then they'll be all random sizes. Okay, so let's click on this one, hold down the shift key and select, in fact let's click on this top one here, icosphere, hold down the shift key and select all of them and just drag them up. Let's zoom out a little bit and let's drag them off to the side here for now. Let's press Ctrl S to save. Then we'll go back to this particle emitter and we need to do a few other things in here, I guess. Let's have a look. Really, we should turn off the show emitter, turn that off here. And in the viewport, we can leave it on for now. And I'm pretty sure, let's see, that should be pretty good for us. Yep, that should be fine. So let's press Shift A. Let's press Shift A and insert a force field wind. The wind is pointing in the upwards direction, but it's been added into the particle collection here. So let's take this wind object and drag it into the top collection up here. So now you see it's called field. Let's call it field wind. And let's go to the strength settings and let's set the strength to 7 for now. And let's see what that does, right? Okay, that should be fine. Let's click on this top collection. I think if you click on it and press Shift A and insert turbulence, let's see, turbulence, yeah, then it will add it into this collection rather than in the particles one, right? So let's minimize that particles one and make sure that when we add something, if we select this, then it will add it into that bottom collection there. And we want to call this field turb, TUR, field turbulence. Let's click on that one and we want to set this to, pretty high, to around 20. So let's go back and click play. Now you can see these particles will start to, they've got turbulence applied to them, right? So they'll start to move in all different directions and do a lot of things here. So they're quite big actually, I think. Let's zoom out a little bit here. We need to make them smaller. So let's click on the particle emitter here. Go to the particle settings and then inside the scale, let's set this to 0.1. Let's make them a bit smaller. They seem a bit too big for me. What you can do is turn off overlays here and that will give you a better view of what's going on. Okay, so let's have a look here. For the particle emitter here, let's try and set the browning to around 2. for whatever reason I don't really like this blue one in here. So what we'll do, this is the purple one. So we'll zoom out, click on the let's click back on overlays here, turn it back on, click on the purple one. I mean, you can leave it if you like it, but I don't really like that color, so I'm going to go back to here and change this to maybe like a lighter blue. I think will look better. Yeah, I prefer that color, but I think there's too many of them, right? So let's click on the particle emitter, go back to here, and let's set this to around 2000. I think that'll be better. So let's go back to the first frame, file, save as, and we'll save it as version 3. And now we want to animate the text movement, right? So let's click on the text. Let's move to, let's have a look here. So we're going to run this at 60 frames a second. So let's just go to here in the output settings and set it at 60 frames a second. So at least it's playing at the speed. My computer is running at half that frame rate, right? At less than half in some instances, but we want to run it at 60 frames a second. And we'll go to the first frame. In fact, what we'll do, let's move to frame 60, so that'll be 1 second. Yeah, let's move to frame 60. So on frame 60, let's hit the record button and press the letter I. In fact, we can go to the object here and make sure the text object is selected, press I here and I here. So that will put a keyframe for there. So I like to put the keyframe here first, then move back to the first frame. Then we can move this text backwards. Let's move it backwards into the scene. And let's move it upwards out of the camera view, like up here somewhere. Then if we scrub forward, we'll see the text will flow down like this, right? And I think it needs to be back more. So let's shift it on this 60 keyframe. Let's move it back a bit to around here. So let's have a look. It's going to come down like this. That's good. So on this 60 keyframe, we want to rotate it, right? Not on this axis. I think it'll be on the Z now. It'll be on the X-axis. So we want to do, in my example, I think I rotated it once. So maybe we'll rotate it twice in this. Let's see what it looks like. So it's 90 plus 360 plus 360 will take us to 810. Copy that and paste it into the rotation X here. 810 degrees. And for some reason, let's have a look. Why are you not rotating? $810. Okay, let's go to the first frame. On this first frame, press the letter I here. On this first frame and set that to 90 degrees here. So in this example, it rotates twice, and I'm not sure if that's a bit overkill. I think it might be, right? So let's go back to our calculator, and we just want to do simply 360 plus 90 450. Let's set that to 450. Now we'll rotate once. Yeah, I think that's better. Then when it hits the floor, we want to give it a few frames, so probably about half a second, right? So that would be 30 frames. So that will take us to 90, 60 to 90, half a second. And we just want to move this forward to around here. So we can almost imagine the text is going to spin with all these particles flowing off of it, hit the floor. The particles will still keep being emitted. And then it's going to get to this point. And then it's going to disintegrate like this, right? So we'll think about what else we're going to do in here. Let's have a look. We probably want to move these keyframes out a bit, so yeah, I think they're a bit too close. So this 60, really we want it around 100. So let's drag this one across. Let's click on this keyframe and drag it to around 100 here. And let's try that. What's this one set to? 100 and let's set that on 110. So it starts to disintegrate around, let's set this keyframe to 120. Let's move it a bit more forward to about 180. I kind of want the text to be moving as it's disintegrating. And maybe what we'll do is let's click on the camera. So the camera has no keyframes, right? So let's untick the record button and let's move it back a little bit. It's a bit too close. So around here, so about -15. I think it's too close. So as this flows down, what I would like it to do, so let's click back on the record button and go to the text object, and then on this keyframe let's drag it forward more to about 100, and it's going to be slightly different to my other animation, right? So I want to do something different. Really what I would like is the text to be moving forward as it disintegrates. So let's click on here, and on the y-axis let's move it forward. So I've shifted that keyframe. We shifted one to 100 and the other one to 150, and we've moved the camera back so we can move the text forward more to about here somewhere. Let's see what that looks like. So the text, we need to move, because we moved the camera back, we need to move this text up a little bit more out of camera view. So the text will come in with the particles flowing out, it will slide, and as it's sliding it's going to disintegrate, which I think will look much better than the last example. I think that's going to be very cool. And then all these particles do their thing. And what we need to do on this timeline is hit the record button and use the mouse wheel to zoom out, so rotate it downwards, so that, and then you can use the middle mouse to pan it across. So really we want to see frame 0 to frame 560 here. And let's just scrub through this slowly. Sometimes it's worth looking at it from a different view to see what's going on. So let's see. I think 5,000 on this text particles seems a lot, right? Let's set it to like 2,500. think that might be good enough. They seem to be getting pushed out quite far, the particles, right? Let's press 0. See it from the camera view. Sometimes it's worth baking before you make judgment, right? So click on the text here and go to the cache and click bake all dynamics. So it'll take a little bit of time to do, but sometimes when you're trying to render things out in real time, you've got a lot of things going on all at the same time in Blender. You don't always get to see what that simulation is going to look like until you bake it properly, until Blender's memorized where all those particles are going. So sometimes I like to bake things and then click on the particle emitter and click bake all dynamics, then check it. Now we get a better idea of what's going on here. I'm not sure I want them to be moving out that far. So let's click on the text here. I think that's down to the turbulence, right? That turbulence was set pretty high, like 20. So let's click on the fill turbulence here, go to its settings, and let's bring that down to around 10. Let's set it to around 10, and then go back to the text, go back to the particle systems, delete the bake, and click bake all dynamics again. Sometimes you have to experiment. That turbulence might be pushing these particles, or creating too much turbulence in that particle system, which is pushing them out too far, distributing them too far. So let's see if we can get them to stay a bit closer to the object. So now you can see they're staying much closer. Look, some of them are getting pushed out, but they're not moving. They're all around the object now, right? Rather than getting pushed out really, really far. So let's see that from the camera view. Let's turn off the overlay for a minute. Yeah, I think that's going to be much better. Let's press F12 just to render it out and see what it looks like. So we're going to need to tidy this up. You can see it looks a bit iffy, so we'll fix that. But I like well, it looks quite abstract actually, so it's quite cool. Okay, so let's try and sort out this floor a little bit, because when we render, we can see this isn't looking quite right down here. I mean, it looks okay, but we want to improve that, right? So let's go to the floor here, and this down to this roughness, I reckon we need to increase this a little bit. So let's just set it a little bit higher to around 0.173. It's really like, you can adjust it slightly. We want to get more color in here, right? So when we render it out now, you see it just looks a bit better, the floor. You've got all the particles and they're going to reflect off the floor, and I think it will look quite nice. I think that's going to be a good improvement. So let's try and set that to that. You have to be quite precise with these settings. Too high and you won't see anything, too low and it just looks a bit rubbish. So let's set it to 1.76. That's what I'm going to do, 0.176 for the floor. Let's render that and see what it looks like. It's looking pretty good. It should be okay. We can improve that a little bit more after. Let's go to File, Save As, and set it as version 4. And then we want to add some volumetric lighting. So let's press Shift A, and we want to insert a light. What do we want? We want a spotlight, right? So let's pan around to the side here. Let's turn on our overlays. Turn the overlays on, and here's our spotlight, and we want to drag that behind the content. We want to rotate it so that it's facing the camera. So let's press R to rotate on the x-axis minus 90 degrees. So you want to set it to minus 90 degrees. The rotation here for the spotlight, right? Minus 90. So it's facing the camera. Let's press Shift S to save. Let's go to the shading, and in here you should still be in the world setting, right? World. Let's press Shift A, and insert a volumetric scatter here. And then let's work this out. We want to set this to, let's have a look. Let's drag the volume to here. And then the color, we want to really set this to like a dark sort of grey, like around here. So set the color to like a dark grey, like this. And then the density, we want to set it to 0.015. And then turn this setting up a bit. And let's see. In this viewport, we should press 0. So let's move our mouse up to here and press 0. We can see what the camera sees. And let's just see how we can improve that, because we don't really see any. Actually, we need to go to the render settings here and turn on volumetrics. We won't see the light. Now you can see the light getting casted here. Let's set the samples to 90. Turn on volumetric shadows and set those to 90. And then set the tile size to 4. You can set it to 2, but 2 takes literally ages to render at each frame, so I'll leave mine on 4. Let's save this, and then we probably want to rotate this a little bit, right? So let's click on the, can't really see these objects here quickly, so let's try, let's see, just want to drag this down here. Let's drag it down so we can see them a bit easier. Let's click on the spotlight and go to its object data. We want to rotate this around to around probably about, I want to increase that, right? So it's about 105, so it's pointing in an upwards direction, something like this. And we want to actually bring this a bit closer. I think actually we want it to be around here. Then let's go to the lamp settings, the spotlight settings, and the energy, we want to increase that by quite a lot. We want to ramp that all the way up to around 40. Let's set around 45 for now. The radius we can set to 0. The size, we can increase that a bit to around 50, somewhere around there. And then let's set the color. Now you can choose what color you want, but I reckon we should go for like a light blue color to match those light blue particles. Something like that should be good. Let's press F12 to render that and see what it looks like. So we've got this volumetric light that's going to push light to the floor. In fact, I think we need to move that down a bit, right? We want it closer to the floor. So let's click on the object, and then on the z-axis, let's bring it down. Let's see, we want it to be around here somewhere, I reckon, because then it'll be behind that text. Let's go to the layout view, press 0 to see the camera view, and then we'll have our text float down like this. And let's click on that light. So that we've selected the light source. Let's move that, because we want to get some shadows in here, right? Something like here. So it's casting this shadow here. think that's looking pretty good. The text is going to float down like this. It's going to hit the floor, slide, disintegrate. The particles will bounce around a little bit. Now we want to probably finally animate those particles. One thing we can do in the viewport here, we can still see this cylinder, right? In the final render we won't see that, but if you don't want to see it in the viewport, you can go to the particle emitter, go to the particle settings, and underneath the viewport here, viewport display, you can turn off show emitter. So you won't really see that in the viewport, and sometimes I do that because it's kind of a distraction and it's nice to just see how it might look without that. So I think we're pretty close. I think what we need to do is turn off the overlays. Let's get in a bit closer. In this text, we need to go to the bloom settings, right? Let's set the threshold all the way up to the top, and we'll increase the intensity. The radius, we don't want it to be too much. Somewhere around here I think is going to be better. Okay, let's pick this frame and render it F12. I think that's going to be pretty good. Let's go to File, Save As, version 5. Okay, let's just go into the shading here. We'll drag this down so we can see more here. Let's zoom in. This is the camera, where the camera can see, right? If you can't see it like this, press 0 on your keyboard, and then you can rotate around this HDRI map. And as you rotate it around, you can get a completely different color scheme. You can get gold in there. You can get all sorts of colors, right? So you want to pick colors that complement this scene. And we could pick a completely different HDRI map. We can go to Open, this Sinatra one, or Satara. Click that one, and we've got a completely different color scheme now for the floor and the reflections and all that good stuff. So we'll stick with the one. Let's see what this cinema one looks like now. So I think we'll stick with the original one that we chose, this one. I quite like the colors, and I think this is a perfect 501 degrees. There you go. That's what I'm setting mine to, 501 degrees. I like the colors that are coming off of here. Let's go to File, Save, and let's go back to the layout. This blue I'm not sure about, so let's go to the spotlight color. You can just rotate around here and find the color that you like, right? It's all about experimenting. You can have a completely off color like green. Maybe blue was okay. Kind of got orange in this scene as well. I think blue was okay actually. We can adjust the volumetric light. If we go into the shading and zoom in a little bit here, in these settings here, we can adjust this light, right? So we want it to kind of be a bit hazy, so I'm setting mine to, let's click here, let's set it to 0.840. So I'm setting it to 0.840, and the density is set to 0.015 here. And then this option here, the reason why we made it darker, because if you make it full white, you can see it's just all blown out. So as we bring this down, you want to get it to like a grey color. Then you get some of the haze coming off of the light, but then it's not overpowering the scene too much, right? So this is pretty good here. Well, I think it would be pretty good. Let's just render it one more time and see. Okay, I'm happy with that. So let's just finish this off. Let's go to File, Save. Let's go back to the first frame. Our text will float in like this. It will disintegrate. And as it's moving towards the camera, when it gets to around here, let's just see if we click on the camera and go to the camera settings. Let's what we could do on this frame 100, yeah, frame 100, hit the record button and press the letter I here and the letter I here. So we'll insert a keyframe here. Let's untick the record button and just move a few frames forward. Just a few frames. And I want to see what the text will look like. In fact, let's go back a few frames to around here. Let's try and move the camera up a little bit. Let's see where we can get some. Let's try and rotate it downwards. So I think we need to rotate it. This is set to 90 degrees. I think if we bring the camera down to around here, that volumetric light is going to hit these edges, right? And give some bloom to them. So I think that will look better. So that's set to 0.33 on the Z-axis, right? So if we move back to this frame here and drag it to the first frame, frame 1 here, that's where the camera will be set on the first frame. And as this animation plays, we'll hit the record button for the frame 100 and set it. Let's just bring it down. We can do it manually. Let's bring it right down close to the floor. It's like very close. Let's make sure you don't go too far, right? Somewhere around here. Let's bring it up a little bit to about, I think here's going to be good. And let's see. So as it flows, the camera will move, and then we'll get some nice lighting off of this, but that's a bit blown out there, right? So let's move this. No, it might look good like that, but let's move this keyframe to 120. And let's slightly adjust this to maybe here. I didn't do this in the last animation, it was just static, right? And then the other thing we can do is we can go to like frame, let's say frame 540. Let's do frame 550. Frame 550, we can move the camera slightly. So let's move it up a little bit and let's point it down like here. So between those two frames is going to be a slight camera movement, a small one. Which I think will make it look a bit better, right? It's always nice to have the camera moving when you're doing this sort of stuff. But if the camera is very still, then it's just not the best thing. So I think that might be a little bit too much. Let's go back and move it down a little bit and rotate it this way. Let's see. Yeah, now we've got like a slightly less movement. And what we might do as well is move the camera forward slightly, just a little bit. So it's good to have some movement in there on the camera, just makes it look better. let's untick the record button, go to the first frame, and now we need to do a few last things to finish this off. So what we want to do, as this text floats in like this, really the first thing we should sort out let's see, so the text will float in and hit the floor and then slide across, right? And on this first frame, let's see, gotta make some decisions here, right? So I think what we'll do is go to frame 60 here, hit the record button, go to the floor. Where's the floor? Floor here. And then go to the material, and on the specular, press the letter I, and then on the roughness, press the letter I. Then go back to the first frame. So go to frame 1, press the letter I here, and press the letter I here. Then turn the specular all the way off, and turn the roughness all the way up. So it's like this. So as this object flies in, the floor will light up like this. Now on frame 30, go to the spotlight and press I on the energy, the letter I on energy here. Go back to the first frame. Let's go back to frame 1, press the letter I on energy and set it to 0. Now we've got a completely black frame, right? So as this text flows in, the light will start to appear, it will light up, and then you'll get this effect like this, which I think will look much better. Now when it gets to the end, we want to repeat that logic, right? So we set the floor to fade out after 30 frames, right? It's 30 frames, so let's 560 minus 30 will take us to 530. So let's go to frame 530 here, frame 530. Let's click on the floor and then press the letter I for, where is it, specular, the letter I here, and on the roughness press the letter I. These insert keyframes. Between these two distances nothing will happen. And then on frame, normally I'll leave it on like, but frame 555, press the letter I here again and the letter I here again, and set these to, let's set the specular all the way off, and then set the roughness all the way to the top, like this. And then we want to fade out the light source, so click on the spotlight, and let's see, we want that to happen quite late, so that will be on frame 536. Frame 536, press the letter I, and then go to the very last frame, 560, press the letter I and set that to 0. Now the lights will be turned off. Okay. So 560 and then on 500, that gives us 1 second, right? So on this frame 500, let's press the record button here. Let's press Shift A to insert another wind object. Let's turn on our overlays so we can see this wind object here, and let's just check, let's see what's the best option here. Okay, so this second wind object, let's name it, where is it? is here, filled, right? Let's drag that into the collection up here, the very top one. Where did I move that? Field here. Just drag it into the top collection here. So it will sit here called field, and it's called field. We're going to name it wind end. Field wind end. This is going to be controlling the end of this animation, right? So what we want to do is move to the, let's put it onto this frame here, 500, and we'll set the strength to 1. Let's see, yeah, let's set it to, well, from the beginning we don't want anything to happen until it gets to frame 500. So really we should set this to 0 and press the letter I here. That inserts a keyframe. Move all the way back to the first frame, jump to the first frame, press the letter I here as well. So between these two distances, this wind object isn't doing anything. So right now it does nothing. Then when it gets to, we want it to be pretty quick, right? So 500 to 530. So this is, let's see, 530. Let's see when things start to, I reckon about frame 540, press the letter I here and set it to something like 1 here. And that didn't seem to do anything. Let's see. Set the strength to 1. Oh, we have to turn on the record button, yeah? Turn on the record button, then set it to 1 and hit enter. Now we won't really see anything happen because we need to rebake this. So let's just rebake it, untick the record button, press Ctrl S to save, go to the particle emitter, go to the particle settings, and when you put in new objects like wind objects or turbulence, or you change the particle system somehow, or you do something, you have to go and rebake it. So delete this bake and click Bake All Dynamics. That will rebake the particles, the emitter, this explosion, right, of this text. And then we need to go and do the same for the, where is it? For the text here as well. So this is the particle emitter actually, sorry. So let's click on the text, delete the bake and click Bake All Dynamics. Let's bake that as well. Let's see what happens now. Let's go to the first frame and turn off the overlays. This is what the render is kind of going to look like, right? Not exactly, but we'll see what's going on here. And in this viewport, it's probably running at quite a slow frame rate compared to what the final frame rate will actually be. So that didn't work out too well. So also our particles seem to be ending too soon. So let's sort that out. Let's go to the particle emitter and let's see, they end on frame 200. So they stop emitting here on frame 200. And they last 150, so probably we set this to a much lower number, didn't we? We set it to 2000, it was 5000 before. So let's delete this bake and set this to around 4000, and let's give it a bit more lifetime. Let's set it to around 220, then click bake and let's bake those particles. The particle should finish around 420 now, so let's see. Yeah, I think that'll be better. Let's render this frame, press F12. So we can still see particles in there mixed with the text. That's what I wanted. And then this text is supposed to float up at the end, but you can see that's not working. So we need to fix that. I think that needs to happen sooner as well. So let's click on the, that's going to be this field wind here, the end one. So let's see, we'll probably start that around 440. So let's grab this keyframe and drag it back to 440 here. And then on this keyframe, let's click it and go to the wind settings, the field wind. Let's turn on the record button. Let's move to this frame here actually, frame 540. Let's go to the field wind end and click on here, and let's set the strength to something like 40. Let's make it much stronger. So hopefully that will push these particles straight up out of the scene. It might be too much, might not be enough, I'm not sure. Let's untick the record button. And unfortunately we've got to rebake again, so let's click on the text, let's click on the particle settings, delete the bake, and click the bake. Let's bake that one more time and see what happens. We could set it to bake only the end part, but I think it's worth just baking it. It doesn't take too long, it takes like 20 seconds or something. So we just let it bake. So look, we can see a clear frame here, right? And then they float up like this. So let's play it from here. And I think that's going to be okay. This light fading out, I want that to fade out a few frames early. I want a few black frames at the end. So if we're ever doing any sort of cutting, editing, transitions, stuff like that, we'll have a few black frames at the end, which is always a smart thing to do. So go to the spotlight, we can see that it fades out here. So let's drag this back a little bit to around here, like this keyframe, and then drag this keyframe back a bit. So we've got a few blank keyframes. So then this should fade out. And then you've got a few black keyframes, only a handful. We only need like about 5 probably, right? Let's drag it forward a little bit to here. So that should be good. I reckon this end part could have been a bit better, like these particles floating up, but I think that's okay actually. I think that should be fine. I think we're good to render this out. Let's just render this frame, F12. Yep, I think we're good to go. So let's go to File, Save. Let's go to the render settings here. Everything is good in here. Let's go to the output. Make sure it's set to 60 frames a second. So 560, 560 divided by 60 gives us just 9.3 second animation. Let's go to the AVI JPEG here in the output file format, AVI JPEG, RGB. Click on the folder. Let's find that folder on my desktop here. Let's select it. Let's press, let's go to the first frame Let's go to File, Save, then press Control and F12. Let's just check it's going to render out that first frame. Right, I'm a bit paranoid. Let me close this. I'm going to stop the render, go to the first frame, and I've made this mistake before. Particle emitter, go to the particle system, delete the bake, and click Bake All Dynamics. Do this first. It will cost you around a minute of time, 30 seconds. But I've done stuff in Blender, then I've gone to render out all of the frames, and once I've rendered it all out, waited an hour and a half or whatever it is, I've gone to check the actual animation and the particles ain't right or there's something wrong. So let's click on the text, let's click Delete Bake, and then click Bake All Dynamics. This will take a little bit of time. But doing this now is going to save you the problem of rendering out all of them frames. It takes an hour and a half or whatever it takes, and then you find and you watch the video, it ain't right. Then you have to do this anyway. You have to come back, rebake it, and then render it. So let's just do this now, and then we'll make sure we haven't got a problem when we render, because you can't really check. I mean, you can sit there and watch the frames render, but you're going to be there for a long time. So this looks good to me now. Okay, I am no longer paranoid. Okay, File, Set. Let's go to File, let's cancel that. File, Save, Control F12. We'll see that we can at least see 1 or 2 frames. When we know we can see 1 or 2 frames, then we can just let Blender go and do its thing. So we should see some blue light. Let's just see, we can see the volumetric light coming through now. That's on frame 2, it's taking about 5 seconds a frame. What you'll notice is when Blender is rendering out these frames, the more volumetric light, the longer it will take each frame to render. So these first ones will be quite quick. So I'm going to leave this to render, and we'll check it once it's all done. Okay, so Blender's finished rendering out all of the 560 frames. So let's close this down, and let's just see in Blender. We'll go to File, Save. Let's close down Blender. Let's open up this folder, and we'll make a copy of this AVI file here. So we've got 2. We've got the original one and the new one. Let's check out this new one. Let's play it one more time. So I can see some differences between this one and the original one that I did before. This one, I can see the particles last a lot longer, way longer. So to fix this, if you wanted it to be more like that, whereas this one, the particles, they flow down and then they disappear quite early. Alright, you can still see them, but they actually disappear quite early in that particular scene. So to fix that, we can open up Blender. Let's just open up Blender. This is version 5, right? So when we open up Blender, these small particles, what we could do is go to the particle emitter here, go to the particle settings, and delete this bake, and we can extend their lifetime. We can give the, you can see we've got all the way up, and we've got all of this gap here for the particles. So if we extend the lifetime, this red line will increase. So we could extend it all the way down to around 540, I think, around here. So it'll be at 338, let's call it 340. So now the particles will live longer. So if we go back to the first frame and scrub through, our particles should live a lot longer. We can still see them when they're flowing upwards right at the end. So we can still see particles in the scene towards the end of the animation. And we could probably add more particles as well, set it to around 5,000 or even more. And then we'll have more particles in this scene. So let's see. And I believe in the previous one that I did, the particles were a little bit bigger as well. So we could set the size here, the scale. We could scale them up a little bit, maybe to like 0.2. That's probably a bit too big. Let's say about 1.5. So they'll be a bit bigger. Then I think that would work out a bit better. So now it's for you to really go and experiment. Let's render out this frame here and see what it looks like. So we can see the particles in here. Really, we need to bake it, to be honest, to see the particle position. We'd have to actually So when you change these settings in the particle, or if you change the text settings, particles for that, anything in here, always remember that you have to go and rebake everything, right? Bake the dynamics. So you have to rebake everything after you change the settings. So when you render, the particles will be in the correct position. Otherwise, when you render a frame, a test frame, or the actual animation, it won't be in the correct place. It will just look wrong. So you can go and experiment, add more particles, remove some, change the colors, change the turbulence. This is the turbulence that we added, right? That will affect the particles, change the wind settings. Go and experiment, play around with the settings, and you know, you can go and create your own version of this. I think this will be a lot better with more particles. You can see they're jumping around a bit more. I think maybe a bit more turbulence maybe would have been good as well. But overall, I think it's quite close to the original. I think it still looks good. And now it's your time to take this tutorial and make it your own, right? So go and experiment. Let's go to File, Save, and save this. We'll close this down. We've got this video here. We'll watch it one more time. Yeah, and I think it ain't too bad. Then we've got the original one that I made before. We'll watch that one time. You can see in the original one, at the beginning it was black frames, a lot of black frames up until about here, up until about 1 second, so up until about 60 frames it was all black. So you could see that quite clearly. I think in this new one, the lighting shows quite quick on the floor, so you could have changed the way this lighting shows. Maybe have the text float down, hit the floor, then show the light, and then show the floor. It's up to you. You've got to experiment with this now and, you know, try and make it different. You can move the camera angle. You can maybe move it at an angle rather than having it just forward. You could have twisted it around the side or something and just change it. But the whole objective of this tutorial was really to explain how to use the modifier here, right? The Explode Modifier. So you can use this to make fireworks, you can use this to make loads of different things. So I'm going to be experimenting with a lot of these tools in here. I'm actually learning Blender myself. So as and when I learn something new, or I experiment and I find something good, like I did an ocean one before, we did this fluid simulation we've done, the Explode we've done now. So I'm going to look at some of these other ones and see what they can do and try and understand how they work and make more tutorials for you guys to learn from. So let's close this. That's the end of this tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you in the next DCP web tutorial.